Bonjour and welcome to this edition of In Bed with the Fitness Industry. It's an absolute pleasure to have everyone come back in and join me. And our dear friend coming to us from Toronto, back in bed. He and I back in bed once again. Our friend Eric is joining us today, who is a award-winning, which I was looking forward to saying that, an award-winning director of personal training at Good Life Fitness, focused on building the education for the teams that ensure phenomenal fitness experiences at Good Life across the country, really getting the best people in the industry to have access to the best platforms, and has developed an incredible concept to do that in such a multinational company that essentially goes from coast to coast here in Canada with Good Life Fitness. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Thank you for the introduction. That's been one of the best intros I've gotten so far, so I'll take it.
Am I the first one that got to say award winning?
You are on a
That's
podcast. You are
really
definitely
cool.
are.
We'll keep that as a surprise to everybody. We'll get to that in just a sec. But thank you for coming in bed, and let's talk about these boudoir situations that are so important to us. So you sleep in boxer briefs. That's your comfiness.
Yeah. I run hot, so it's one of those things that boxer briefs is my go-to.
Yeah, and you and I have very similar. I run hot too, but you and I have very similar bedtimes and awake times. So you're a 9:30, 10 p.m. Bedder and a 6 a.m. waker. Yes, that is how often or how regularly are you able to manage that in your schedule?
There might be 2 days when I'm traveling, I might stay up
Mm,
later. But otherwise, my alarm clock internally goes off at 5:30 in the morning, 6 a.m. I
mm.
never set an alarm clock. It's the decade plus as being a trainer, having 5:30, 6 a.m. clients. It's just ingrained in me.
Very cool. That's nice. And I assume that somebody in the house will wake up at some point, even if you do miss that.
If I need that alone time in the morning to get some stuff done.
Ah.
So whether it's my cardio, reading 10 minutes, tackling that. So the little pitter patter of feet starts at about 7:30. So yeah, it's important.
Nice, very cool. So let's get right into what it is that you do and how you work in our industry. I would love to know, as somebody who was a trainer, what drove you towards a leadership position in fitness? What led you towards this type of career path that had you take on the leadership position at Good Life?
Um, the answer was the honest answer is I didn't aspire to it.
Mm,
When I came to industry, I came in pretty well educated. So I had a phys ed life science degree, been coaching kids and athletes since age 15. And yet I was terrible at my business. My first 3 months, I did 43 consultations at Good Life and I closed zero agreements. I
oh,
couldn't get a
wow.
single member started properly, right?
Mm,
So I thought of quitting at least 10 times.
mm.
When my business took off, third month, all of a sudden my business took off because I started being more authentic and started applying motivation interviewing.
Huh.
Um, all that's around about to say is that I didn't want to become a fitness manager. I was on a 9 month term of Eric, you're going back to teacher's college, just kill some time. And then the fitness manager left, and then all the trainers said Eric has to be the fitness manager. So since then, I've kind of taken the role and I've had a bigger impact every step up further where I can help people avoid the mistakes because I've made a ton of them.
Interesting. I find it fascinating, and this, from my perspective, you won't be surprised that the 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 biggest change had nothing to do with exercises themselves, had nothing to do, in that 3 month period, like you said, you really started to shift towards behavior change or shift towards what really helped make people tick and mindset and these things. And that's what made the change, as opposed to, I think the temptation, I don't know if you see this when trainers start out, is that they need to know more exercise. They really, really focus on program design. They think if they have the best combination of programs and program designs, that's what's going to get them more clients. When really we know relationship building and interpersonal skills are key more than anything else. I find that really interesting. Do you notice that too?
100%. Like, I don't
Hmm.
need to know four different ways to fire someone's VMO in order to get them to invest in training and to get them to really say they want to change their life.
Hmm.
Right. So it's with a trainer in their careers, a lot of them gravitate towards that because it's an easy way to create confidence. I become this person who knows more than you do.
Hmm.
And that's a model I'm hoping we're gonna shift. I know we're gonna
Mm,
have to. So I'm hoping we make that shift of I'm here to be you're the hero in the story, to quote my good friend Jason Jones, is actually the client.
mm,
And he has to stop being the trainer. So the more I get into motivational interviewing, behavior change models, the more I can help uplift people and guide them through their journey.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. You are incredibly focused on learning and growth. It's actually a big part of your reputation. It's one of the things I admire about you because you stimulate that in yourself and your team so much. Are you finding that, especially now in a tough labor market that we've got in the fitness industry, that it helps recruit, retain, and engage personal trainers? Is that a big part of the opportunities and partnerships that you bring into Good Life?
Well, I view my job as I have to help guide individuals into turning a job into a career.
Mm,
So what I've noticed is that we started to market it, but it hasn't had a major made a huge impact. At Good Life, we hire 100 trainers or so a month. That's just part of
mm,
our volume being as big as we are.
right.
That number hasn't changed dramatically. What has changed is the in the clubs where there's a sense of growth, community, knowledge base, connection. That's been a major factor in retaining and creating a career path
Mm,
for our trainers. So when I look at the trainers who have stuck with Good Life through the pandemic, the ones that have a clear career path of, I want to be a top level trainer, I want to move into management, or I want to be an educator, those are the ones that are the most engaged in the roles. And also, when they have that team community, I refer to team again, with their fitness managers, where they are learning as a group, that's
mm,
so special and massive. Because in our industry, we strive for that sense of community. We strive for that third home for our clients. We need that as well. That workplace, that community is massive.
mm. It's interesting. You talk about that, and you talk about the importance of the fitness manager, so the personal training manager, the fitness manager, the head trainer, et cetera, or however we would call them in different clubs. I find, and I mean somebody who's been an educator my entire career, I find we've really broken all the rules around learning and education during the pandemic. And it was a good thing because I don't know about you, there's times where I need, I did my 200-hour yoga teacher training, but I also have 2-hour conversations with people sometimes. And I feel like I learn just as much from that as I would from sometimes a book or a seminar or a webinar, or, education kind of comes to you in different mediums at different times. And sometimes, just like you said, like that coaching relationship you have with a manager can be just as powerful as a 2-day workshop. I don't know. Do you see it being varied? Like, how do you see people in digesting content, learning, etc. right now?
What I find is that our attention span has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter.
Hmm.
Um, these things are a blessing and a curse. We know that,
The
right?
technology, yeah.
So the attention span, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a live course,
Hmm.
whereas so how long can someone retain, how much attention can you pay? And how many things can you truly take action on?
Hmm.
I go to a conference, I go to a 3-day course. The research shows only 30% of what's taught is applied.
Hmm.
It's retained and applied, right? So you're right. Having a drip method, having more touches at a more frequent rate is actually a better way for information to be applied. One of my good friends, Kevin Darby, talks about it's not just acquiring knowledge, it's applying knowledge.
Hmm. Hmm.
So having a mentor, like I know you do mentorships as well. So having a mentor who can really make a difference and help you drip your action plan in place, that's
Hmm.
massive. It's so important.
Yeah. And it's the difference between, again, learning and strategizing and implementing and actually engaging and having somebody around you, having the support. And I think it's lonely for solo entrepreneurs sometimes that don't necessarily have that colleague or that mentor or somebody there to help them. And but we are in an industry where I find if you will just ask, a ton of people will help to mentor one another. And it's not necessarily more experience. Sometimes it's just something different. And I feel like we've been so collaborative that I've never asked somebody to mentor me and they said no in some way, shape, or form, right? Just some sort of a conversation. And you're one of those people that I love engaging with and having those conversations on the panels and things that we've worked with. So please know that one of the reasons this works really well at Good Life is because there's incredible leaders like yourself making sure that it's consistent and making sure that it's ingrained into the day-to-day work and not just on paper. So that's something I hope you realize, Eric.
Well, it was one of my aha moments was I had 8 people present at the conference this year, at Canfor Pro Conference.
Mm,
And to see them develop their careers and grow to that point where they're now presenting and having that ability to impact the industry because they put
mm,
in the 10, 12 years of time and really master the craft,
mm.
that's one of the most cool things we can do.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Congratulations on that. As we're looking into what's happening in the industry now, so whether it's, training platforms, whether it's education, whether it's the learning, what you see coming in, because like you said, if you guys are hiring at the scale that you have 100 trainers a month, what trends do you see being sustainable, having that staying power, really making a difference? Which ones do you believe in the trends that we're seeing now have longevity, therefore would probably be a good investment of time and money to get curious and maybe learn more about?
Loaded question. That's like a 3-hour conversation there.
give me
So
give me two or three. Give me two or three.
yeah, let's go. One, I believe that a hybrid training model is going to stick. Having the
Mm,
ability to do online coaching with in person, the brick and mortar plus the online coaching
mm,
is going to stick around. Virtual has died off. It
mm,
has not been as important from our perspective. We don't see it projecting well because people crave that in-person experience,
mhm,
right? The other component is that I see a shift in the industry where assessments become less of a priority.
mm. Physical
So
assessments.
physical assessments.
Mm,
So right now we're realizing that there's something called the nocebo effect, where the more you typecast someone into, okay, you have a kyphosis, lordosis,
mm,
it becomes a syndrome and they become attached to it and it
mm,
tends to hold them back. So the
mm,
more we get involved into assessments where we empower people, we really focus on Nick Winkelman's work, language of coaching, or other stuff where we're really helping uplift clients as part of their assessments.
mm,
Those are the trainers that are going to have the highest renewal rates and the highest, we call it efficiency in our company, the highest service ratios of my
mm.
clients prescribe 3 times a week. They actually execute that 3 times a week.
Wow.
So that's a trend that I'm starting to see pick up in certain
Interesting.
projects that I think will really help make a difference on our renewal rates.
So is it like people are less inclined to want to hear about what's wrong and more inclined to want to hear about the potential? Is that like where do you see that shift in the assessments being less prominent or being less powerful?
One of my good friends, Jason Jones, put it really well is that part of our jobs as trainers is to let the client truly be the hero of the story.
Mm,
It's not to let the trainer, and sometimes I want to feel like a hero. That's a long term play. That's the
mm,
celebration of when we achieve these goals, I get to feel like I contributed. I was a mentor, a guide. For the client is when they're doing assessment, I may take notes. For example, your knee may fall valgus, your big toe may be elevating. There's things I'm watching for that I can
mhm,
help program for.
mm,
But when we're evaluating, it's take a look at I'm gonna video it, show it to the client. What do you see going really well? What's when
mm,
how happy are you with how you perform this? And getting them to grade themselves
mm.
is a will help empower them more.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that, Eric. Um, you had and you and I talked a little bit about the concept of wellness and concept of incorporating mental wellness and more holistic view of fitness. Do you see that continuing on? Do you see that being represented in a company like Good Life Fitness?
Yeah, it has to be. We did about 10 years ago, we created the 4 pillars of health: your stress, your sleep, your exercise, your nutrition. And that's been ingrained into our company culture.
Mm,
Execution on habits coaching is something we always have to improve on. No one's figured it out yet in the industry,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So we
mhm,
have to get better at that. And it's realizing that we make mistakes. I went through the fad where hit training only, don't do steady state cardio. I think we all went there, right? I did the whole like paleo and elimination diets that were very aggressive.
mhm,
It's now where we have to shift is that we have to meet our members where they are, our clients where they are,
mhm,
and treating the general
Yeah.
population. So yeah, I 100% agreements, Natalie. It's got to go that way.
It's interesting because at the same time that you say that, I'm also seeing, I mean, the extremes still exist. So right now, I feel like the extremes in fitness are kind of, I mean, the extremes of like everything is mobility, and really mobility is training and rehab is training. And if you're, unless you can be mobile and unless you're training for real life versus training for, functional versus dysfunction, like all of that, I see that a little bit. And then in food, it feels like, I notice a significant extremes when it comes to carnivores and vegans, and it's getting way, way, again, it feels like we're being pulled and polarized, which I think has a lot to do with in society, things are being polarized a lot. But I like the idea of just no matter what's happening and what's trending or where we get pulled in extremes, really it's about what the client needs and what's accessible to them. That's not just a solution, but rather a change in what they need where they're at. So I appreciate that you're sharing that.
Some old studies show that 70% of the world does not enjoy working out, right? So our first task is just getting them into the habit
Mm.
of joining us and enjoying one of the best drugs in the world, fitness, right? It is addictive and you can't stop it. Once you start it, you can't stop it. Great, but they have to get addicted on it. So, like you said, we have to meet them where they are, be client centric. And the best plan is the plan they're going to stick with.
Mm.
So,
100%. Thank you. I appreciate that. You and we talked about a little bit at the beginning. So congratulations on winning CanFit Pro's Fitness Professional of the Year for personal training. That is a phenomenal award, and I had the pleasure of watching you win that award and to hearing what you had to say there. What does it mean to you? There's different ways of seeing recognition and seeing awards and seeing the validation of that, but I'd love to know for you what that award means.
you nail it perfectly. There's different ways of viewing it, right? I've been in the industry for 17 plus years. So first off, the testament of the work that I put in with my
Mm,
team and with the trainers and the focus of putting in the grind. This is the first time I've applied for this award ever. Um, I was not going to apply. I got convinced to by Steph Dupy, Michelle Caldwell, Eric, you have to apply for the work you've done in the past 2 years. Um, for me, I applied because it's a testament to the great team I have at Good Life, who've put in some hard blood, sweat, and tears into recovering well from the pandemic and trying to change their models of thought to be more, like you said, inclusive, caring, and meet members where they are. So I'm really proud of the external course providers we worked with, internal educators we developed. And that's really a testament as to why I believe
mm.
I've had that impact. The other big change was that I worked with, during the pandemic, I worked with Beth Yarzab and Barb, and we remodeled the manual. So that was a major step for me, is that if we can impact our CanFit Pro PTS manual, if we can impact the delivery of that, we can really impact thousands of trainers.
Mm. You also had, and I'll share this just because I had the pleasure of watching the video from your nomination, but you also had an impact at home from the next generation and the last generation. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I think we talked about previously offline, but I wasn't dealing well. In the first 6 months, I was not a good person. My wife told me, Eric, pretend you're at work, go in your office, go work because you're not a happy person.
Mm.
Um, so I built a home gym because the gym, it's not my therapy, but it's my outlet. It is a major outlet for me. So
Mm.
having that outlet at home, I've never worked out at home. So having my son actually pick up workouts, that was massive because he's trained before, but he got into a really solid 3 times a week routine because he
How
saw me.
old's your son?
He's 16 now.
Nice. Thanks for
And
sharing.
after the first year, my parents got convinced to come in on Saturdays to work out. And he started training. He said, Dad, can I come in and train them? And he just went to the conference this past year because he's like, okay, this may be a path I want to explore. At the very least, I want to know how to train myself and your parents even better. So that
Very
was,
cool.
yeah.
That's very cool. I love knowing that. Again, we build things around us, and we that's part of the resiliency is, and if you can't take care of your own self, it just becomes really overwhelming to have to continue to serve others. So I love how you started by doing that, and props to your wife for the suggestion. But I love that you started doing that for yourself, and then once you did it for yourself, then you focused on the most loved ones, the closest loved ones that you have, and your son and your family, and then your parents. And it's a place for us to reconnect with integrity in really really stressful times. So I appreciate you sharing that story, because I do think it's important for us to remember that we just tend to want to make sure everybody else is okay, but self-care is really where it starts for us. So in whichever way that's relevant. So thank you for sharing that, Eric.
I really appreciate. Yeah, it is putting that me time first
Mm.
is a massive opportunity.
Mm. So tell me, as we close off today, I would love to know. I mean, there's a lot of changes, a lot happening. There's a lot of exciting things and some frustrating things that are going on. Again, because your perspective is one that looks across all of Canada. What are you seeing in the coming months that you are grateful for in our industry? What inspires you?
What I'm grateful for is that, as first off, is that members are coming back in droves. So it happened since February for us really in Canada, right?
Okay.
Been a huge demand of people wanting to come back to the gyms. Um, Community live experiences are still massively important.
Mm-hmm.
There were many talks in 2020 about the gym environment's dead. It's never going to come back. We need to move on. And that's been one of the biggest myths that we're helping dispel.
Mm.
Um, I'm in, I'm grateful for. We talked about mentorships. I still am a huge believer in live courses. They create community, they create shared experiences, they create connections where you can offline connect with other trainers. It's
Mm-hmm.
the learning that happens not just from the presenter, from within the room, that's so special. So
Mm.
I'm so excited to have more and more of these live experiences coming back all across the country. We just signed a few partnerships I can't announce yet, but I'm really excited to launch in the next few weeks. So
Mm.
there's a lot of
Oh.
those happening.
Oh, ho, ho. We'll definitely keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate. I know you've got a very, very full schedule, but I appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate what you're doing for the phenomenal teams over at Good Life. And again, congratulations on that award. And I look forward to seeing you again in person or virtually, and keeping up with all those new announcements you guys have going on.
Thank you so much for what you do for the industry, Natalie. I really appreciate it. And for having me on, it's been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. Au revoir.